I've been watching classic films. I'm currently on 12 Angry Men, and I know I shouldn't pause the movie to make a TikTok, but I just got to this moment. Nigga! I gotta say outright, within the first 5 minutes, this movie is there's no bullshit, there's no weird exposition, they don't show everybody. It's just, you're there, there's a murder case, you guys gotta decide whether this boy lives or dies. Nigga, this moment, I literally just went, oh shit, out loud. Man, fuck. So a Democrat-leading dark money group has been secretly funding really big influencers, people like Aaron Parnas, David Pakman, Suzanne Lambert, upwards of like up to $8,000 a month, which translates to like $90K a year, to push like Democratic messaging. The contract is kind of crazy and comes with a lot of restrictions. The biggest thing being that they could never talk about it and never let people know that they were getting paid for it. And while that might sound unsurprising, there are multiple things about the story that are absolutely hilarious. Thing number one is that they didn't start doing this until after they lost the election. And I really need you to think about that. First, Republicans have been doing this. Republicans stay sending dark money to influencers. They've been doing it for online content creators for like a minimum of 10 years. But then when you think about media as a landscape and a whole, Republicans have been doing this for decades upon decades, especially when you think about the talk radio craze of the late 80s into the 90s that the Democrats didn't catch up on until like 2000. And by then it was already established and they were already behind. The next thing is that this makes all of the pre-election Fed jacketing super funny. I talked about this at one point at the way that like when it's political advertisements, you don't have to disclose in your video that you're being paid for it, but it does get disclosed generally for like tax purposes into the government. If you ask people about it, they are fully at will to answer. And while people were sitting around being like, oh, this person's on the payroll of the DNC, that person's on the payroll of the DNC, I need you to know that your corrupt political thinking, like your corrupt political strategy in your head was more advanced than the Democrats had thought to do. I need you to think about that. People were sitting around assuming that there were people on secret DNC payroll, and the Democratic establishment hadn't even thought that was worth investing in until they lost. I think there's this perception of the DNC and the Democratic core and the old guard as this like overwhelming controlling force, when really it's like a group of somewhat incompetent and spineless people with money who want to protect the status quo. I was talking about this article with a homie, and it's like, I think it's almost more embarrassing that they're just incompetent. They're not even good at like old-fashioned corruption. They're not even like manipulating the strings. They're just like behind. And they only started doing it when it was way too late, and they got caught within a year. And also something that Republicans are willing to do that the Democratic Party is not willing to do, and it's like secret, like we gotta put all these content creators up front, is let those people be a little wild. And when you look at the details of the contracts, they are super restrictive. It's like you can only push the people who they say you can push and only align yourself with the politicians they want you to be aligned with. So for example, Zohran Mamdani would have been a complete no-go because he's not the one they're trying to push out. And even more so when you think about the fact that like people were questioning why Aaron Parnas was never reporting on Israel until it got to like a certain degree. Yeah, trying to hold such tight reins over the creators that you pay makes it obvious that you're running a front. It's also crazy because there are people who already are just plain old liberals who support the Democratic Party who you could have just pumped money into them and they would have continued to make that content probably at a higher rate with a better rate of success, more resources, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, even when they try, they fail. It's a loser's party. It sucks, dude. Eric Adams hands me a bag of chips with some money in it. I'm telling you right now, not only am I taking the money, I am immediately snitching on that nigga. Immediately. Zero hesitation. Just over here, officers, over here. I need to be incredibly careful with what I'm about to say in regards to Charlie Kirk's shooter. There are currently some stories going around about him having had a trans partner. These stories are not confirmed, I'd like to say. What is true is that he had a roommate who he texted. We do not have that much information about the roommate. The speculation is that this roommate was trans. And and because of this, I'm seeing a lot of people go, oh, we've proved you he was left-wing. We told you he was left-wing. And the thing is, if you think that a trans gamer means that they're left-wing, you have not gone far enough to the right. I want to be careful with what I'm saying, is that once you pass regular American republicanism and you get into some like deep online 4chan slash poll type shit, that coalition looks a lot different than white Christian nationalism looks. And as someone who occasionally just dives in and peeks at what that world is, you will understand that a lot of these people have very little qualms with sexuality when compared to something like race or Jews. I keep thinking about Aiden Walker's post about how this murder might be a shit post and how we're not prepared to understand that. But looking at it from that angle, and if you know what kind of politics 4chan-esque people engage in, sexuality is not a key detail in telling what their politics are, or even that their politics make sense in a traditional way at all. But I want to be careful because I don't want to direct any more hate towards trans people, but I just need to be clear. There's a section of political belief that perhaps you guys do not know about. The Democratic constituency wants a messiah so bad. So bad. They want someone who's going to come along and be able to like fight Trump, and then they can stop paying attention to politics. And the unfortunate truth is you have to pay attention to politics for the rest of your life. There's a lot of rallying around Gavin Newsom right now as the guy who can fight Trump because, you know, he's trolling Trump on Twitter, which is, hey, it's fun to watch. And the potential gerrymandering of California to react to Texas gerrymandering is genuinely solid political planning. But watching people be as defensive as they are of Gavin Newsom shows that there has been no lessons learned since 2016. There's been this very pervasive narrative that unwillingness to look past the flaws of a candidate are what makes that candidate lose. Sort of this echoing of, oh, and you were worried about her emails, or the 2020 slogan, settle for Joe, or even in 2024, before Joe Biden dropped out, that people were being too harsh and critiquing him during the primaries, and then even during Kamala Harris's 100-day run, that people were not giving her enough credit. But this ignores the reality and the largely untapped potential of just recognizing what Americans worry about the most. A general disdain for the political elite class of this country, the feeling that there is consistent economic instability, that you could work your entire life and never have rest or peace. People feel that in a very existential way. And that's being pushed to the side in lieu of trying to find the guy who they think is going to be able to fight Trump fire with fire, rather than finding a person who's going to be able to tap into this general American sentiment of despair. People are not happy with Trump. They weren't happy with Trump in 2024. They were just more unhappy with Biden. They're just unhappy. There's increasing wealth gap, right? There's an increasing lack of mobility. I however want to leave on this note that something that can currently be tapped into is that Republicans are undoing work they've done to push the blames of American issues onto immigrants through the brutality of ICE. According to Gallup polling, during the tail end of Biden's presidency, 55% of Americans believe that immigration needed to be decreased. That number has dropped down to 30%, and immigration approval ratings, people who think that immigration is generally good for the country, has jumped up to 80%. 80% of Americans now believe that immigration is good for the country. It's less of a time for empty quips and more of a time to do whatever you can as a politician to prove that you can tap into the feelings of this country and solve the problems or present solutions for the things that people actually care about. But hey, what do I know? Maybe we just need another strong white man to lead us to glory. I don't know. A joke where Trump thinks that the Department of Housing and Urban Development has something to do with black people because of the word urban is no longer, or has never really been, a joke. In an attempt to get Eric Adams to drop out of the New York City mayoral race to give Cuomo a better chance, he's offered Adams a position in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is currently being led by his cabinet appointee, Scott Turner. During his first administration was held by Ben Carson. And while there are significantly more important things happening, I think I'd pay money. Well, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't pay money. But I'd love to see him explain what he thinks the Department of Housing and Urban Development is. Just no help, no words, just him fully like, niggas.